regarding a lawsuit. It was a woman had been in a bus accident and claimed that she had post-traumatic stress disorder from the experience. And so I met her in my office and examined her and rendered an opinion on what had happened, and then was brought into a mediation where I sat with 3 judges, the attorney who had asked me to review the records and interview the patient, and her attorney as well. And about halfway through the proceedings, the attorney for this woman said, "Dr. Wynn, I'd like to read something to you and ask you what you think of it." And he read me a brief essay on the nature of mental illness, depression, et cetera, and how debilitating it is and how awful it is. And I listened to it very carefully, and I said, well, I agree with everything you've just read, but I don't see how it has anything at all to do with this case. He then revealed that what he was reading to me was an editorial in the Seattle Times that I had written myself 3 or 4 years earlier. So I mention this because one of the immense pleasures of getting to know Dr. Nuland is the opportunity to get to know him not only in person, which has just been delightful over the last 24 hours or so, but also through his various writings. And I have an enormous advantage, of course, which is I have all this stuff that you've thought and written and published at different times, which you may or may not still believe, but I'm going to read it to you and ask you to explain it to us. So please come and join me. And again, a warm welcome. So I want to, if I may, use something that you wrote that actually, you know, I'll tell you, of all the things you've written, and I couldn't find it because I could have read it to you. You know, there's some things that you read and you go, yeah, you know, and some stuff you read and you go, oh, absolutely. And some stuff you read and you just go, yes, like this. And the experience I had with that was when a gentleman wrote a letter to the New York Review of Books and called you an amateur.
Called me an
Yes, amateur historians, physicians who find other things to do in their free time.
Well,
and the response that he wrote to that was just like this.
What did I write?
You wrote basically...
I defined the word amateur, no doubt.
No doubt.
No doubt.
And then went on to list a few of your qualifications,
yeah.
And pointing out that while he was criticizing you for a variety of things you didn't understand, you pointed out that he was not only misquoting you, but he hadn't done any homework of his own to research. It was too good. I was looking for it. It was a while back now. I think it might have been around the Semmelweis review.
That's worse than stealing a chocolate bar from Woolworth's.
That's right. All right. So I want to read y'all something, and this is from a lovely book that I recommend to you, titled "The Uncertain Art." I'd like to talk a bit about being a physician and about being a physician in the circumstances we've been discussing. This is from the introduction to the book on page 15, XV for purists. It is judgment. Actually, you know, I could have you read this.
No, you go.
Okay. It is judgment that lies at the heart of diagnosis, of therapy, and of all that is gathered under the umbrella called case management. Inherent in the nature of clinical decision-making is the realization that, perforce, it must always be accomplished in the face of incomplete and largely ambiguous information. The process is one of sifting, weighing, and judging, and it will ever be thus. Disease never reveals all of itself. The path toward healing may appear visible, but it is always poorly lit and subject to changes in direction. No matter what biomedical advances may realistically be expected in the future, no one who has spent more than a few months at the bedsides of the sick could find it conceivable that this imperfect state of affairs will ever change. Uncertainty is more than a constant. It is the very muse that inspires the intellectual fascination of medical practice. To accept it is the essence of wisdom. To enjoy it is the essence of the enrichment of a doctor's soul, exceeded only by the personal reward of helping a fellow human being in trouble. Without uncertainty, there would be no need for judgment. Without judgment, medicine would be a career for technicians and, given the intrinsic nature of illness, an impossibility.
That describes my entire philosophy of medical practice. Somehow in this world, medicine and medical care has become equated with science or with industry. The belief that symptoms are measurable, that they can be viewed objectively, was disproven 350 years before the Common Era by the Hippocratic physicians. There's a book, one of the 80 books written by the Hippocratic physicians, called Aphorisms, Truths, Rightnesses. And the very first aphorism is the art. Medicine is the art. The uncertain art, as I've called it, for all of the reasons that you heard. The art is long. Life is short, by which they mean it is impossible for any physician to have at his and now her fingertips the information, the knowledge, the experience that will enable them to see every facet of any patient's illness. So the art is long, life is short. Opportunity is fleeting, by which they meant a lot of therapy and of diagnosis, and the outcome depends on the point in a disease at which you see the patient. The opportunity to cure is a fleeting thing. Then the next, after the next semicolon, experience is delusive. Well, it's been translated in many ways. Fallacious, delusive, don't count on it. We read analyses and studies of 40,000 patients, and we say, oh my God, this particular hormone must be taken by every woman. So she doesn't. She decreases her likeliness of breast cancer. 5 years later, there's a meta-analysis. Every study that's ever been done on breast cancer confirms this. Then you just wait 10 years, just hang around a while. And there's another analysis showing that the statistical methods were all wrong, and this hormone is the worst thing a woman can take because it's most likely she's going to get breast cancer. So what are these multiple studies except experiences? Every one of these studies represents 5,000, 10,000 individual experiences. And so experience, any doctor's experience, whether he reads about it in the literature or has it at the bedside, is fallacious. Experience must be put into the teacup, into the crucible of the final element, which is right after the next semicolon. Judgment is difficult. The art is long, life is short, experience is fallacious, opportunity is fleeting, judgment is difficult. It will be ever thus. Judgment, the physician's judgment, because it's unmeasurable, depends in part on your third MRI and your second CAT scan and how much zinc is floating around in your gallbladder. But these are all factors. And the ultimate factor, as an experienced clinician like you or Neil or others in this room knows, has to do with that almost undefinable quality where you put together the intuition that we think about. Yes, experience, as long as you're recognizing the invalidities of certain kinds of inexperience and what is right for this particular person at this particular time in their illness and in their lives. So this art of ours is uncertain. That was written about by the greatest physician America has ever produced, actually Canada produced, William Osler, who's the first chairman of medicine at Hopkins, and others have written about it again and again. One of our duties, you don't mind if I don't look right at you, I'm just trying to gauge the response to all of this, which I consider so crucial. One of our duties as teachers of medicine is to teach young people to be comfortable with uncertainty. I don't know too many residents who will even admit nowadays uncertainty. They've got all sorts of reasons to tell me they know exactly what's going on, and I find that their diagnostic acumen is neither better nor worse than it was before the great days of technology. Each individual, they have never, it's like snowflakes, you know, snowflakes all start out the same, believe it or not. But as they go down, they start changing because of atmospheric conditions and trauma and all of this. Every single patient, every single person who has lived since the dawn of modern man, I quoted 200,000 years ago, a while ago, is different from every other one.
Well, and Shep, say a few words about why medical students and residents feel so compelled to be absolutely certain. I mean, isn't this, in fact, this is a cultural process.
It is absolutely a cultural process. Remember the selection process, how we get these young people. Yes, they are as idealistic as they have ever been, but they are also young people who have met with success throughout their lives. They have met with success not only in the examination room, but in the way they're received by others, in the esteem that they are given in our culture. And then finally, we pick 1 out of 12 applicants and say, you are the creme de la creme. And then we inculcate in them for 4 years the certainty that they are indeed what they thought they were and what we have thought they were. So you get the uniform of arrogance. That white coat is the uniform of a very arrogant person. I hate to use such a word about my young colleagues. Unfortunately, some of my older colleagues have never lost their arrogance. Humility is part of the blend of judgment.
I agree with everything you're saying, but I think that you're maybe not yet focusing on how much pressure there is on medical students and residents to know.
Oh, absolutely. This is a very important thing, the pressure cooker. When I was a house officer working on my emergency room rotation, if a 15-year-old kid came in with pain around his umbilicus that had migrated to his right lower quadrant, and I noted that his white count was a little elevated and the acute inflammatory cells were increased and his temperature was 100.8, and when I listened to his abdomen, the bowel sounds were really kind of quiet, and when I touched his right lower quadrant, there was a little spasm there, and it was very tender, and I did certain movements of his legs that made it more tender. I would say, and with 90% accuracy, but realizing 10% inaccuracy, the kid's got appendicitis. Every kid who is 15 with typical symptoms of appendicitis now gets an ultrasound. Everybody, all comers, get an ultrasound. If there is any question at all in the mind of the young doctor who has seen this person, probably done a superficial examination because he or she is depending on the ultrasound. If there's any question, there's a CAT scan that's done. There's still question, there's a CAT scan done with dye. What these kids don't realize is that they're exercising judgment in choosing those modalities of diagnosis, but the judgment has been taken out of their hands because they are being trained in a particular way of seeing symptoms. I mentioned earlier, I think it was last night, the algorithm by which automatically there flies off a series of diagnostic procedures depending on what the symptoms are, so the young people are not thinking. They are doing what's automatic. And if they don't do it, and they present this patient to the chief resident, the senior year of training, the following morning, the chief resident will say, well, why didn't you get an ultrasound?
Or did you actually graduate from college is another thing they might say. Or Or well, how much did your father give to the medical school to get you in here anyway? Or, I mean, there's a fair amount of humiliation that goes on in these rounds as well.
Well, that's, of course, part of it, and there are all kinds of words for that humiliation, which you've heard many times. Part of the arrogance is to kick the fellow on the ladder below you. Well, we've always done that. You know, interns, we think of interns as the Mortimer Snurds of the medical profession. If you remember Mortimer Snurd, only people over the age of 60 are laughing here. Yes, there is a hierarchy, but the hierarchy continues up to the professor himself. We are supposed to be taught humility by this, but the fact of the matter is, just by being in the system, the humility is rubbed out of us.
I have another thing I want to read to you, to all of you.